Hello, I'll be reading section 2 of Das Kapital. It is, let me pull it up, the twofold character of labor embodied in commodities. So I'm assuming it is the pros and cons, or at least the humanizing factor of people working to create things. And it is just not things that exist. That is my idea. And I love Kai so much, my baby, my love, my true love. I love you so much. I hope that we live in a small little cottage. Anyways, to the reading. Alright, at first sight, a commodity presents itself to us as a complex of two things, use value and exchange value. Later on, we saw also that labor too possesses the same twofold nature, for so far as it finds expression in value. It does not possess the same characteristics that belong to it as a creator of use value. I was the first to point out and examine critically this twofold nature of the labor contained in commodities, as this point is to pivot on which a clear comprehension of political economy turns. We must go more into detail. Let us take two commodities, such a coat and 10 yards of linen, and let the former be double the value of the latter. So if 10 yards of linen, W, the coat equals 2W. So a coat is 20 linen. The coat is a use value that satisfies a particular want. Its existence is a result of special sort of productive activity, the nature of which is determined by its aim, mode of operation, subject, means, and result. The labor whose utility is thus represented by the value in use of its product, or which manifests itself by making its product a use value, we call it useful labor. In this connection, we consider only its useful effect. As the coat and the linen are two qualitatively different use values, so also are the two forms of labor that produce them. Tailoring and weaving were these two objects not qualitatively different, not produced respectively by labor of different quality. They cannot stand to each other in relation of commodities. Coats are not exchanged for coats. One use value is not exchanged for another of the same kind. To all the different varieties of values in use, there corresponds as many different kinds of useful labor classified according to the order, genus, species, and varieties to which they belong in the social division of labor. This division of labor is a necessary condition for the production of commodities, but it does not follow, conversely, that the production of commodities is a necessary condition for the division of labor. In the primitive or pre-industrial community of India, there is the social division of labor without production of commodities. Or to take an example, near the home, in every factory, the labor is dividing according to a system, but this division is not brought about by operatives mutually exchanging their individual products. Only such products can become commodities with regard to each other, as a result from different kinds of labor, each kind being carried independently and for the amount of private individuals. To resume then in the use value, the yumminess of a pie, the tastiness of a drink, the warmth of a coat, and exchange value is its value in exchange, typically in a market. So it's basically price. Those are my now more mature thoughts. In the use value of each commodity, there is contained useful labor, i.e., productive activity of a definite kind and exercise with a definite aim. Use value cannot confront each other as commodities unless the useful labor embodied in them is qualitatively different in each of them. In a community, the producer of which in general takes the form of commodities, i.e., in a community of commodity producers, this qualitative difference between the useful forms of labor that are carried on independently of individual producers, each on their own account, develops in a complex system a social division of labor. Anyhow, whether the coat be worn by the tailor or by his customer, in either case it operates as a useful value, nor is the relation between the coat and the laborer that produced it altered by circumstance that tailoring may have become a special trade, an independent branch of social division of labor. Whether the want of clothing forced them to it, the human race made clothes for thousands of years without a single man becoming a tailor. But coats and linen, like every other element of material wealth that is not spontaneous production of nature, must irreverently owe their existence to a special productive activity exercised with a definite aim, an activity that appropriates particular natural given material to a particular human wants. So far, therefore, as labor is a creator of use value, is useful labor. It is a necessary condition independent of all forms of society for the existence of the human race. It is an eternal nature imposed necessity. Without each, there cannot be no material exchange between man and nature, and therefore no life. I think money made jobs. I think that's what he's saying. And then you had to be good at making money, so you focused on one job. We'll know later. The use value, coat, linen, and etc., i.e., the bodies of commodities, are combinations of two elements, matter and labor. If we take away the useful labor expected upon them, a material substrate is always left, which is furnished by nature without the help of man. The latter can work only as nature does, that is, by changing the form of matter. Nay, more, in this work of changing the form, he is constantly helped by natural forces. We see then that labor is not the only source of material wealth, of use values produced by labor. As William Petty puts it, labor is its father and the earth its mother. Let us now pass from the commodity considered as use value to the value of commodities by our assumption that the coat is worth twice as much as the linen, but this is mere quantitative difference which for the present does not concern us. We bear in mind, however, that if the value of the coat is double that of 10 yards of linen, 20 yards of linen must have the same value as one coat. So far as their values, the coat and the linen are things of like substance, objective expressions of essentially identical labor, but tailoring and weaving are qualitatively different kinds of labor. There are, however, states of society in which one and the same man does tailoring and weaving alternately, in which case these two forms of labor are mere modifications of the labor of the same individual and no special and fixed function of different persons, just as the coat which of our tailor makes one day and the trousers which he makes another day imply only a variation in the labor of one and the same individual. Moreover, we see at a glance that in our capitalist society a given portion of human labor is in accordance with the varying demand at one time supplied in the form of tailoring and at another time in form of weaving. This change may possibly not take place without friction, but take place it must. Productive activity, if we let out of sight its special form, viz. The useful character of the laborer, is nothing but expenditure of human labor power. Tailoring and weaving, though qualitatively different productive activities, are each a productive expenditure of human brains, nerves, and muscles, and in this sense are human labor. They are but two different modes of expanding human labor power. Of course, this labor power, which remains the same under all its modifications, must have attained a certain pitch of development before it can expand in a multiplicity of modes. But the value of commodities represents human labor in the abstract. The expenditure of human labor in general, and just as in society, a general or a banker plays a great part, but the mere man, on the other hand, a very shabby part. So here with mere human labor, it is the expenditure of simple labor powers, i.e. of the labor power which on average part from a special development exists in the organism of every ordinary individual. Simple average labor is true, various in character in different countries and in different times, but in particular society is given. Skilled laborers count only as simple laborers intensify, or rather as multiplied simple laborer, a given quantity of skilled laborers being considered equal to a greater quantity of simple laborers. Experience shows that this reduction is constantly being made, and the commodity may be the product of the most skilled laborer, but its value by equating it to the product of simple unskilled laborer represents a definitive quantity of the latter labor alone. The different proportions in which sort of laborer are reduced to unskilled laborers are their standard are established by a social progress to goes behind the backs of producers and consequently appear to fix by custom. For simplicity's sakes, we shall henceforth account every kind of labor to be unskilled, simple labor. By this we do not more than save ourselves the trouble of making the reduction. Just as therefore in viewing the coat and linen as values we abstract from their different use values, so it is with the labor represented by those values we discard the differences between its useful forms of weaving and tailoring, as the values coat and linen are combinations of special productive activities with cloth and yarn, while the values of coat and linen are, on the other hand, mere homogeneous conglomerations of undifferentiated labor, so the labor embodied in these latter values does not count by virtue of its productive relation to cloth and yarn, but only as being expenditure of human labor power. Tailoring and weaving are necessary factors in the creation of use values, coat and linen. Precisely by these two kinds of labor are different qualities, but only in so far as abstractions made from their special qualities, only in so far as both possess the same quality of being human labor, do tailoring and weaving from the substance of values are the same article. Coat and linen, however, are not merely values, but values of definitive magnitude, and according to our assumption, the coat is worth twice as much as 10 yards of linen. Whence this difference in there. And now we're at the next chapter. Alright, so basically he explained that the more hands go into the easy jobs, the more money you make with the big jobs, because it takes 10 people, and now that one person has the resources of 10 people. And that's how in society our money gets like this ladder. And it's probably where like the meritocracy comes in, of like you work hard and you climb up these steps, but we're all putting in the same amount of like individual work. Like we're all working the same amount, right? But we get paid differently just because some of us are doing the easier jobs, It's just rarity. Basically, even though we all do the same, some people will get paid more just because there's less of those people. But not because it's harder. It's just because there's less of those resources. So there's less incentive to do that. Anyways, that is all. I love my baby Kai. I love you so much. Thank you for being in my life. Heart emoji, heart eyes emoji, kissy emoji, heart emoji, kissy emoji with the kissy out with the heart, and then the heart emoji big. You know me. I love you, baby. Peace.